guys, it's Natasha. So I've been getting a bunch of emails asking what I feed my baby. Now that I have a baby, I can actually make claims about this in more than just a theoretical sense. So clearly, as a holistic nutritionist, it's super important for me to feed my baby incredibly healthy foods right from the get-go. But there's more to it than that. The more research that I started to do as it came closer to her 6-month birthday, which is the time that we decided we would start feeding her solids, I started doing some research on different types of feeding. Now, different types of feeding, you might be wondering, what? I thought you just give your baby some puree and call it a day, right? Apparently not. So what I discovered is a different form of baby feeding called baby-led weaning. Now, a bunch of you may have heard of this, some of you might not have. In our little mommy circle here in LA, it's kind of de rigueur, but there are still plenty of people that are like, this sounds totally crazy. So what is baby-led weaning? Baby-led weaning became popular in England and is a way of feeding your baby that involves self-feeding. So instead of giving your baby purees, you're giving your babies real food that's been, cooked and it's soft and is of the right size and consistency for them to self-feed right from the get-go. And you're kind of skipping the whole puree phase altogether. So why is this a good idea? Well, what appealed to me about baby-led weaning is that it puts the baby in charge of what and how much they're going to eat. Now, for those of you who have kids, you know that around 2 years, when the whole no phase starts and the babies start getting really defiant, is when the power struggle really starts in the kitchen, right? So you give your baby food, you set something down in front of them, they start throwing it off the high chair, they start saying no, or literally just spitting things out. Why does this happen? Well, on one hand, there's just the defiant stage of development, and that's totally normal and happens in the early toddler stages. But on the other hand, there's a whole second psychological part to this, which stems from the fact that when we feed our babies, we're in control of what they're eating. And that control aspect can be really hard for a young toddler to deal with at a certain point. They want to be in control. And once they learn that when they eat, they make you happy, when they finish that last spoonful, you get lots of praise, and when they don't, you're upset, you're frustrated, you start negotiating and bargaining and making little spoon airplanes to try to get them to eat just one more bite of this food that you meticulously prepared and spent so much time on. That power struggle really starts to take shape. They know that they can get a rise out of you if they start to decline the food, purse their little mouths, push the spoon away, throw things off of their high chair, etc. So with baby-led weaning, they're in charge of what they eat from the start. All you're doing is presenting them with options. You're putting things onto their little high chair table. You're giving them a wide variety of foods. They're the ones that are putting it into their mouths. They're deciding what they're going to eat and how much. And it really does set them up for a healthier relationship with food from the get-go, in my opinion. Now, of course, as you know, I deal with a lot of adults in my counseling practice that are struggling with their weight, that are struggling with emotional eating. All these issues, I think, might stem, at least in a small part, from our relationship with food as children. So if you think about it, when you're being spoon-fed something, you don't get to be as connected with your body's cues of fullness, right? Because mommy's the one telling you when you've eaten enough, because mommy portioned out, 2 ounces of plum baby food into your little bowl and she's feeding it to you. But if you're full and you don't want any more, there becomes a little bit of this struggle of, do I eat more just to make mommy happy? Do I eat more despite the fact that I'm full because I know that I'm going to get some praise? Do I purse my lips and refuse to eat anymore, knowing that that's going to get a reaction out of my mom? It becomes kind of laden with some stressors and some emotional issues right from the start. So what I personally really like about baby-led weaning is that it gives my baby the opportunity to eat when she's hungry and stop when she's full. And this is a concept that I teach my clients right from the start. We should only be eating when we're hungry. We should always stop when we're full. And we should be connecting to that fullness cue right from the beginning. We should really be kind of breathing through our meal, connecting to our eating process so that we can really be in touch with, am I full or am I still hungry? If I'm still hungry, I'm going to eat a little more. If I'm full, I'm done. Even if there's a ton of food still left on my plate, that's okay. I know as a kid, when I was growing up, and Mom, if you're watching this, don't get upset, you didn't do anything wrong, but there was a lot of pressure to finish what's on my plate. And I remember crying as a little kid because I had fish soup that I was supposed to eat, and I hated fish soup, and I wasn't allowed to get up from the table until I finished that last bite, and it was really traumatic and really kind of scarring for me. And again, I wonder what lasting effects that might have had. So that's kind of why I am into the concept of baby-led weaning, from a nutritional perspective as well as from the perspective of emotional eating as adults, in terms of my private practice and the work that I do with adults in nutrition. So how does it work? Basically, you feed your kids what you're eating within reason. So this might mean, if you're having some broccoli and some rice and some chicken, you give your baby florets of broccoli that have been steamed, that are nice and soft. You can give your baby, a piece of chicken if you feed your baby meat. I'm actually waiting to feed our baby animal protein. I've given her a little bit of fish, which she loved, but other than that, we're waiting a little bit. But anything that's in kind of a chip shape. When I say chip, I mean chip in the British sense of chip. So meaning like a wedge, like a fry. And that's because they are able to pick things up in their little fists, and you want an amount sticking out. So if you've got a chip shape, say you've got like a wedge of sweet potato, they can pick it up in their little fists, and there's enough sticking out of their little fists so that they can put it in their mouths and start to kind of mash it around a little bit. Now, in theory, you're supposed to be able to feed them anything that you're eating, and I know that's what the books talk about, but I found that to be a little bit not the case, right? Because I don't tend to eat food that's really baby-led weaning friendly. I eat a lot of salads, I eat a lot of greens, I eat a lot of vegetables that are still a little bit too hard for her to eat this early on. She's only not even 7 months yet. So I'm still doing a little bit of a combination. I'm giving her foods that may have been leftovers or a part of what I'm eating, but I'm also making her her own, steamed broccoli or sweet potato fries or etc. And then I'm also supplementing with a little bit of purees, because from the get-go, it's really, really important for babies to be getting high iron foods, especially for breastfed babies. So unfortunately, most high iron foods just don't lend themselves very well for baby-led weaning, because they're things like dark leafy greens, things like dried fruit, apricots and prunes, things like beets, which are just like super, super messy. So foods like that, I'm still cooking up and pureeing for her. But I use these adorable little things called Num Num dips, and I'll leave a link below for where you guys can get them. You can get them on Amazon, but they're great. They're these little self-feeding spoons, and they're the perfect size and shape for baby to grab onto. So little Margot likes to grab onto her spoon and feed herself. The pack comes with two. One of them, as you can see, has these little slots in it, and this one is better for foods that are a little bit thicker consistency, so things like oatmeal, things like, any kind of puree that might be a little bit thicker. And then there's another one that doesn't have the little slots. This one you can see is a little bit green because Margot pretty much just eats greens out of it. And this one does not have the slots. And so this is great for pretty much anything else that has a bit of a thinner consistency. The other fun part is that they're slightly textured. which is really fun for teething little gums and little teeth. So it's actually really kind of a satisfying experience for them to put this into their mouth and kind of chew on it a little bit. So, so with purees, I'm still able to follow the tenets of baby-led weaning, which is that little Margot feeds herself. She's the one bringing the spoon into her mouth. I'm preloading it for her and then giving it to her. But I am able to give her some purees and to give her some high iron foods, which I find to be super, super important as first foods. So that covers the how and the why. So then the what. So right from the get-go, Margot's first foods were really bright, vibrant veggies. So greens, I started pureeing greens for her right from the beginning, but I make them interesting. So I was making, for example, sauteed collard greens that we were having with cornbread the other night. So I would make our sauteed collard greens. I had some like crushed red pepper in there. I'm not afraid to use seasonings with Margot's food, with the exception of salt. No salt for baby, no salt at all. So our food gets salted after it's already been plated. But then I take some of our greens, spices and all, and I puree it up. Sometimes I'll add a little broth or some breast milk, and voila, we have a super yummy puree. So I was adding things like prunes, stewed prunes, to her purees, dried apricots to her purees, but I am being really mindful about not making them too sweet. Something that can be a problem with a lot of commercially prepared store-bought baby foods is that they're really heavy on the fruit and really light on the vegetables. So if you look at the ingredients, even if it's like a kale, beet, whatever, apple puree, oftentimes it'll be the apples are first on the ingredient list, and then maybe the beets, and then something else, and then the kale is last. And there's the thinking that babies are naturally going to be more attracted to sweet foods, but it's our job as healthy-minded parents to be adjusting and accustoming their palates to not just sweet foods. And the reason they like sweet foods is because breast milk is actually really sweet. So it's natural that they're going to be attracted to that flavor profile. But from the get-go, if we get them really excited and really into foods that aren't sweet by not mixing in fruits and by not being afraid to be like, hey, here's a spinach puree, all it is spinach, or here is an avocado, or here is a bell pepper, maybe even a green bell pepper, and not just the sweet red bell peppers. If we're not afraid to just give them foods that maybe for us we might think aren't super exciting to eat on their own or might not be sweet enough, then we are really establishing their palates early on, which is awesome for having non-finicky eaters later. I am convinced that the whole issue with finicky eaters that will only eat white foods or will only eat, processed kind of like white carby stuff comes from the fact that they weren't really exposed to enough vegetables, kind of I don't want to say bland, but non-sweet foods in enough variety from the get-go. And those are probably kids that were given a lot of baby food, like store-bought baby food, or were made food that had a lot of fruit in it to make it a little bit sweeter. So, all right, so what do we eat? Every morning we have a green smoothie, and basically I just give Margot some of my green smoothie. I pour it out before I add my protein powder, because I just don't think she needs that much protein. I may be wrong. It's just kind of like a gut thing. I love my protein powder. I don't think there's anything harmful in there. It's just, one scoop has 20 grams of protein, and I just, whatever. But everything else that goes in my smoothie goes into her smoothie. So I literally make up the whole smoothie. I'll have 50% greens like kale or spinach, and then just a little shy of 50% fruit. So I'll do half a banana and some mixed berries typically. I add a scoop of brewer's yeast, which is amazing for the ladies, for milk production. I'll also link below to my article on ways to boost milk production. Brewer's yeast is pretty high on that list. I'll add some scoops of oats, just rolled organic oats, dry, Also really great for milk production. I'll add some ground chia seeds or ground flax seeds, a spoonful of coconut oil, amazing healthy fat, wonderful for you and for baby, and a spoonful of nut butter. Now I know a bunch of you are going, oh my God, nut butter to a baby. But what we're discovering is that keeping babies away from nuts for long periods of time is actually going to increase their odds of developing nut allergies down the line. So I'm a big fan of introducing nuts early on. We started with almond butter, and then I gradually started adding in a little bit of peanut butter. I had some Benadryl on hand, so I knew that if there was an allergic reaction, I knew what to do. Obviously still take her to the hospital, things like that, but you know, we don't have any family history of nut allergies, any immediate family history of nut allergies, so I wasn't really worried, and lo and behold, there was no issue. So, you know, in countries like Israel, there's this really interesting article about how they feed their babies these like little crackers that have peanuts in them, and all the kids in Israel are running around eating these crackers pretty much like from the point where they start eating, and there are like hardly any peanut allergies in that country. So, so I'm a firm believer in, you know, early exposure to all of these foods really actually helping baby to avoid allergies down the road. So, breakfast. Green smoothie. Again, I pour some out into her little container before I add my protein powder, and then I let her self-feed herself her smoothie with a spoon. I have a mommy friend who actually just lets baby drink it out of a little beaker or a little cup. I'm really excited to start that soon when Margaret gets a little bit better with drinking from a cup, because for now it's still kind of a mess. But for now we're just doing the spoon, and we'll get to the cup hopefully soon. Days that we don't do a green smoothie, we do oatmeal. In the beginning, I was just doing oats, like how I'm giving her my oats, and I do my oats chunky, and she wasn't super into them, and I was really upset. And then again, another mommy friend suggested pureeing the oats, so I actually just pulse them in my coffee grinder for a couple seconds before cooking it, and I do smooth oatmeal, which is more of kind of like a cream of wheat consistency, and she loves them. And again, they're a little bit thicker, so we use the slotted Num Num Dip spoon. I do not add sugar to hers. I'll add a little maple syrup to mine, but I do not add sugar to hers. I do add cinnamon, which has a nice sweetening effect, and I may do some like stewed apples or some stewed dried apricots or prunes or something like that mixed into hers, which she absolutely loves, and it sweetens it. So that's breakfast. She's also tried eggs, scrambled eggs a couple of times, which I think was a little bit hard for her for self-feeding. The pieces were a little bit too small, so we'll try that again in a little bit. She's had pancakes. Those were a huge hit. She's had pancakes, both gluten-free pancakes from Gluten-Free Pancake Mix, and my favorite gluten-free flourless pancake recipe, which is literally just bananas and eggs. I'll paste the recipe below as well. Loved them. She loved them. And those are wonderful because you can cut them into kind of, again, fist size, it's like longer than fist size strips, and she was just jamming it into her mouth. And I'm going to post a bunch of pictures below of her eating her various foods, which is literally the cutest thing in the world. And then for our second meal of the day, which we usually have either after the second nap or after the third nap, she'll have greens of some sort, typically again in a pureed form. So lately we've been doing peas with mint, and what else was in there? I think that was just peas and mint in a little puree. She had her collard greens with crushed red pepper. She had some sauteed kale with some prunes. And again, I went light on the prunes just to make sure that I didn't make it too sweet. And what else? I think those are the main greens that she's been eating lately. And then I also try to, if I'm giving her a puree, I also try to give her finger food as well, so again, that she can be practicing. And so the foods that we've been giving her, sweet potato are a huge hit, pumpkin or squash, which again, I've roast in chip shape size, broccoli, huge hit, cauliflower has been a big hit. The things with like handles, you know, broccoli and cauliflower kind of have these built-in handles, those have been huge. I steamed some bell peppers for her, she really liked those. What else? think those have been the main foods that she's been eating so far. I'm ready to start introducing fish a little bit more, so I'm going to start making that for her. Probably like a white fish or something that she can again grab onto, but it's soft enough that she can kind of mush it around with her 2 teeth. And beans. I'm going to be starting her on beans. Those, of course, I'm going to puree. But I'm not going to make them super smooth. With the majority of my purees, I'm not making them really smooth because, again, I want her to be comfortable with chunkier consistencies, which is going to make it easier for her to eat a wide variety of foods early on. You know, the other thing with finicky eaters, you know, slightly later, you know, into the toddler years, is that they got really used to smooth pureed foods. And so then eating something like a tomato or I don't know what, you know, different foods that have a slightly chunkier consistency can be problematic for them. So I think it's really important to be introducing those different textures early on, as well as different flavors. So beans, I'm gonna just kind of do like a rough puree. I don't even want to call it a puree, like a food process, like a pulse kind of food process, so that, again, she will eat it with her chunky spoon and not with her super pureed soft food spoon. So that's kind of the long and short of it, more the long than the short of it. There's a book on baby-led weaning, which I highly recommend checking out. I actually just got the cookbook, the baby-led weaning cookbook, because in addition to everything you need to know about baby-led weaning, it also has all of the recipes. I'm not going to say that I am super into all of the recipes. There's a lot of animal protein in here, which, you know me, I'm not like super huge on animal protein. And then, you know, there's just like some things that are just not like my kind of food, but a lot of it is really, really good. And there are some wonderful ideas when you're just kind of like, what do I feed my baby? And the cool thing is that all the serving sizes are for 2 adults and 1 baby, which is super great for dinner with you and your loved one and your little baby. And then a lot of the lunch or breakfast recipes will be for 1 adult and 1 baby. So you can literally just be making yourself some of these awesome recipes and then giving some to your baby as well. So I'll link to this book. You can get it again on Amazon. But I do definitely recommend reading this before you start baby-led weaning. There's a lot of stuff to just kind of be aware of. Gagging, you know, choking hazard, not huge, you know, again, not a reason not to do it, but it's something to know about, something to be aware of, and something to kind of have a game plan of, you know, if your baby swallows a piece that's slightly bigger than they can handle, what do you do? And then, you know, the book also talks about all of the other developmental benefits of baby-led weaning, which I haven't even gotten into, because again, you know, for me, the eating, the nutrition, and the kind of long-term healthy relationship with food benefits are the big appeal, but there are tons of other really great reasons to consider this form of baby feeding, like, you know, faster development in terms of their hand coordination, their pincer grip, their chewing and swallowing reflexes, just getting developed a lot earlier. But again, I'm not an expert on that. I would read the book. So that's what we've been doing. I hope this has been helpful. There are a lot of really great online resources for baby-led weaning, which again, I'll link to below. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you guys are doing, what favorite recipes you guys have for your little ones. I know I have a new mommy Facebook group with some of my Mommy and Me class friends, and we're constantly sharing recipes. And, you know, sometimes it can be kind of a mystery. What do I feed my baby? I don't want to just be giving her these boring, you know, pureed things. What can I feed her that's going to be more exciting? So, you know, it takes a village. I'd love to hear what you guys are doing to feed your babies interesting, awesome foods. And then your experiences, especially if you've already gone through the whole process of introducing your little one to solids. You know, I'd love to hear about your experience, what worked and what didn't. So I hope this has been helpful. Again, this is Natasha Uspensky of The Organic Beauty signing out. Thanks so much. Bye.